Catholic Church had done to the European mind in particular was discipline it so that over a period of 1,000 years, 1,300 years, 1,400 years, there was this rule that there was a conceptual structure within which you had to interpret everything. And what that did was turn the educated European mind into a systematizing cognitive entity. And that once that systematizing cognitive entity had been established, then it could free itself from those underlying disciplinary structures and go off and do such things as produce the scientific revolution, for example, which required incredible systematic thinking. And so Nietzsche had this really interesting idea about freedom, and he believed that slavery was an intermediary between the undeveloped individual and the free individual, that you had to submit yourself to some intense disciplinary process for some period of time in your life before you could develop any true freedom. And so you think, maybe you want to learn to play the piano. It's like, that's not going to be any fun for a really long period of time, right? Because you're really bad at it. And there's a million things you have to memorize, and you have to stumble around like an amateur. And the same thing happens when kids learn how to read, and some of them never get past that point, and they never get to the point where they can enjoy reading. But in order to put yourself together, you have to put yourself in a vice and allow yourself to be constricted and mangled even by the thing that enslaves you. But the goal should be that as a consequence of submitting to the discipline, that you become disciplined. And then once you become disciplined, you can emerge from the disciplinary structure as someone who's free. And that's something that's very much worth thinking about as well. Carl Jung had something to say about that too, which I really liked. He said that part of the reason that modern people have, it's not the only reason, there's the Industrial Revolution, obviously, but part of the reason that modern people have been able to escape from the catastrophe of tyranny and slavery is because we've agreed to make ourselves our own slaves. Right? So instead of owning a slave, you own yourself, in a sense. And so you trot yourself off to work and exploit yourself so that you can stay alive. And maybe it's not something that you want to do, but you've taken on the role of slave in some sense in relationship to your own survival instead of forcing someone else to do it, which is also something I think that's very noble about the West, is that we're willing to enslave ourselves as individuals, and we're not doing that to other people. Now, we're doing it to some degree, obviously, because the society is imperfect, but that's something that's very much worth thinking about.